Let's go.
From Wall Street to Main Street, the COVID 19 pandemic's impact was felt far and wide, testing the resilience of global financial markets like never before. As we navigate this uncharted economic landscape, lingering questions demand answers. What were the pivotal moments that shifted market dynamics? Which sectors proved most vulnerable, succumbing to unprecedented disruption, and which surprised us with their remarkable adaptability? How did governments, businesses, and individuals respond, adopt, and evolve in the face of uncertainty? In this presentation, we'll delve into the key takeaways, critical lessons, and future implications of the pandemic's impact on global financial markets. We will examine early effect on banks and currencies, wide impact on stock markets, impact on oil market and fluctuations in rates, and also effects on business activities. Aftershock on geopolitical shifts through experts' analysis, real world examples, and data driven insights. We'll explore what this means for the road to recovery and beyond. Join me as we uncover the complexities, challenges, and opportunities emerging from the pandemic's impact on global finance.
This is Ms. Bauddin. I am talking the early effects on the COVID-19 on banks. The COVID-19 pandemic, which began in the early 2020, triggered an unprecedented global health crisis. Governments worldwide imposed lockdowns to contain the virus, which led to a sharp decline in the economic activity. As businesses closed and consumers stayed home, entire sectors of the economy, including the financial sectors, experienced severe disruptions. Banks, in particular, were affected early on as they play a critical role in the economy by providing liquidity and credit to businesses and individuals. The pandemic brought a new challenges to the banking industry, forcing it to quickly adapt while ensuring the stability of the financial systems. This presentation focused on the two key aspects on the early impact on the bank's liquidity pressures and capital management challenges. Now I am discuss the liquidity and capital management challenges. With lockdowns in the place and businesses experiences a steep decline in revenue, many companies and individuals withdrew their deposits from banks to cover essential expenses. These sudden withdrawals strained banks' liquidity as they were left with less cash on hands to meet other obligations, such as a new loans or operating costs. This created sufficient pressure on banks to maintain the adequate levels of liquidity as a key component of financial stability. But at the same time, banks had to address growing concern about the capital management. Regulatory bodies such as central bank reinforced the importance of maintaining strong capital buffers. This meant banks needed to keep enough capital on hand to cover unexpected losses, especially as the economic outlook worsened and the risk of loan defaults increased. However, doing this was not easy. On the one hand, banks were earning less because of reduced business activity and how demand for loans. On the other hand, they had to meet strict capital requirements to avoid potential insolvency in the face of growing uncertainty. Now move to the summary. The early months of the COVID-19 pandemic presented banks with major liquidity challenges as businesses and individuals withdrew funds to survive the crisis. At the same time, banks were under pressure to maintain a capital reserves to ensure their long-term stability despite facing lower revenues. These combined effects pushed banks to adopt new strategies, setting the stage for long-term changes in the financial sectors.
Hello everyone, it's me Ali Khayyam Abbasi, and I'm going to discuss the significant impact of COVID-19 pandemic on global stock markets. We will explore the initial reactions, disconnects between markets and workers, benefits for ordinary workers, and the recovery of financial markets. Let's dive into the each point to understand this more clearly. Let's start with the initial stock market reactions. When the pandemic began in early 2020, global stock markets faced severe volatility due to widespread uncertainty. The S&P 500 in the US fell by 30%, while the UK's FTSE 100 dropped 25% between February and March 2020. This sudden decline reflected the global fear and panic as countries imposed lockdowns and halted economic activity. There is an example in which American Airlines saw its stock price drop by 54% in March 2020 as travel restrictions brought the airline industry to a standstill. Now, let's discuss the disconnects between markets and workers. While stock markets rebounded quickly after their initial crash, the real economy struggled to recover, creating a disconnect. The Nasdaq surged by 40% from its March 2020 lows, largely driven by tech stocks, even as unemployment skyrocketed. Global unemployment hit record highs, with the US unemployment rate reaching 14.8% in April 2020, illustrating the economic strain. There is an example in which Marriott International faced a 90% drop in occupancy rates in April 2020, even though the stock market was showing signs of recovery. However, there were some benefits for ordinary workers. Despite the economic downturn, certain sectors, especially technology and e commerce, saw significant growth. Companies like Amazon and Zoom expanded rapidly to meet the demand for online shopping and remote work solutions. This expansion created new job opportunities, with Amazon hiring 400,000 new employees in 2020 to keep up with the demand. Government stimulus measures also played a crucial role in supporting both businesses and workers during the pandemic. Finally, let's examine the recovery of financial markets. By late 2020, global financial markets had largely recovered, with the S&P 500 surpassing 4,000 points in April 2021. However, the recovery was uneven across industries. While tech and healthcare thrived, sectors like travel and hospitality struggled to bounce back. The growth of companies like Pfizer, whose stock price rose 50% between March 2020 and January 2022 due to vaccine development, highlighted the uneven recovery. The stock market recovery showed resilience, but not all industries or workers benefited equally from the financial rebound. This recovery demonstrates the resilience of global markets. Thank you for your attention, and I hope the impact of COVID-19 on global stock market has provided valuable insights to the listeners.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Mohammad Kumail and I will discuss the global oil crisis due to the coronavirus and the response to those crises. Also, we will discuss the rise of the digital economy. First of all, let's discuss the effects on oil market. The oil market faced an unprecedented situation as lockdowns took effect. The global demand for oil dropped sharply. Transportation was restricted, fewer people were traveling, and industrial activity slowed down, with demand collapsing while producers were left with surplus supply. In April 2020, we even saw oil prices go negative for the first time in history, meaning producers were paying buyers to take oil off their hands because storage facilities were full. This situation was a direct result of the pandemic's impact on demand, but it also highlighted the fragility of oil markets, which depend on a delicate balance between supply and demand. It was devastating for oil exporting countries. Nations like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Nigeria, which depend on oil exports for a significant portion of their government revenues, faced enormous budget deficits. With oil prices so low, these countries couldn't fund their public spending plan. In order to manage these crises, many countries had to dip into their foreign reserves or even take debt to cover the shortfall. It wasn't just government finances that were affected. Private companies involved in oil production also faced severe financial stress. Some even had to halt production or lay off workers, which added to the overall economic strain in these countries. Due to these financial crises, the central banks around the world, especially the Federal Reserve in the US, moved swiftly to prevent a complete meltdown of the financial system. Their primary strategy was to cut interest rates aggressively to almost zero, making borrowing much cheaper and encouraging spending. The Federal Reserve also initiated quantitative easing, which involved purchasing large amounts of government and corporate bonds. This injected liquidity into the markets, calming investors by ensuring that there was enough cash in the system. These measures, along with the fiscal stimulus packages, were essential in maintaining market stability. Moreover, these actions played a pivotal role in cushioning the deeper economic impact, especially as COVID 19 continued to disrupt global geopolitics. The economic strain further intensified geopolitical rivalries, particularly with the trade and political tensions increasing between major powers like US and China. With the ongoing pandemic and the geopolitical rivalries between the major powers like US and China, the pandemic acted as a catalyst for the digital economy. Tech companies, especially those involved in e-commerce, cloud computing, and digital communication, saw their stock prices surge. Companies like Amazon, Zoom, and Microsoft experienced record demand as consumers and businesses adopted to a remote lifestyle. On the other hand, industries that rely on physical presence, such as airlines, hotels, and traditional retail, suffered significant losses. Many of these companies had to downsize or even file for bankruptcy. Small business and corporations were some of the hardest hit. Unlike large corporations, many small businesses didn't have a financial buffers to withstand the economic crisis. Many struggled with cash flow and banks made it harder to get loans due to the uncertain situation. Although governments provided support like the Paycheck Protection Program in the US wasn't enough for many, especially in industries like restaurants and retail. As a result, many small businesses closed permanently, causing major job losses. COVID 19 has brought lasting shifts to global markets, including rising national debt, supply chain disruptions, and accelerated digital adoption. Inflation and uneven recovery still impact trade and investment globally. Geopolitically, the pandemic intensified rivalries, especially between the powers like United States and China, as both nations competed in trade activities, vaccine distribution, and technology advancement, with tensions rising over supply chain dominance and self-reliance. Overall, COVID 19 has reshaped long term geopolitics, pushing nations toward greater economic independence.
The repercussions of COVID 19 were the main cause of the unparalleled upheaval that the world's financial markets experienced in 2020. With steep drops in indices like the Dow Jones and FTSE, global stock markets descended into chaos, leaving investors unsure of what was next. As central banks lowered their interest rates to all time lows and injected enormous stimulus packages to stabilize economies, banking institutions were upended. Additionally, there was volatility in currencies too, with major ones like the US dollar and the euro seeing notable swings. As demand fell as a result of worldwide lockdowns, the oil markets experienced an unprecedented drop, with prices even going negative in April 2020. In addition to harming the energy sector, this oil price collapse brought about geopolitical changes, making it difficult for oil producing nations to maintain equilibrium and revenue. But as the world faced a storm, one thing became clear. As Einstein said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Thank you.